I took the vaccine. When I started to have all these symptoms, that's when the blood test came back showing I had an autoimmune disease. The doctors patched me up. They got me some medication, and they wrote a waiver saying, you don't have to take the vaccine anymore. But they said, due to the close temporal correlation, between the onset of symptoms and the anthrax vaccine, wouldn't be medically prudent to take any more anthrax vaccine. I can tell you the day I got sick. I can tell you the symptoms when it started. I can point to the blood work. I can see when it was clean. I can see when it was dirty as all get out. But I can't tell you that I have a vaccine injury, because nobody can tell you that they have a vaccine injury because the medical community refuses to look. And if they don't do some type of double-blind, placebo-controlled study or whatever, then they're not going to see that there is a problem with any vaccine anywhere. And they're never going to look. They're never going to do those studies because they don't want to.
From the Weston A. Price Foundation, welcome to the Wise Traditions podcast for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
Hey, Hilda here. Sometimes we take freedom for granted. This is not one of those times. Many of us have become increasingly aware of the need to defend our freedoms right now. The right of free expression without the threat of censorship or physical harm, the right to bodily autonomy, and the rights of parents to protect their children's health and bodies against forced medical mandates. This is episode 281, and we have 3 guests today. Retired Major Jim Gallagher, attorney Patty Healy with the National Vaccine Information Center, and Joe Ordia, the regional facilitator for Virginia Freedom Keepers. With boldness and conviction, each shares their story and perspective in this compilation episode. Jim tells of his declining health following a round of the mandated anthrax vaccinations while he served in the military. Patty explains what motivates her to volunteer with NVIC and how she helps keep current the ever-changing state exemption forms on their website. And Joe expresses the importance of our personal and parental rights to choose and direct our children's medical care. Before we get into the conversation, I want to remind you that this is the last of our Health Freedom podcast series, but there are health freedom groups near you should you want to get more involved. Go to the westonaprice.org website and click on the Get Involved tab. There you will find a drop-down for health freedom groups listed state by state. And we have another resource particularly for parents. We have online groups. If you are looking for support on how to nourish your children and yourself, join the Nourish Children 2.0 and Nourish 2.0 groups on Facebook for one donation of only $5 per calendar year. Nourishing Our Children is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation. By the way, I conducted these interviews at the Virginia Freedom Keepers Rally in early October. Enjoy! This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Retired Major Jim Gallagher, I just got to meet you here at the Virginia Freedom Keepers. So nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well.
So how long were you in the Air Force?
Well, I retired after 21 years.
How many missions do you think you flew?
Oh gosh, it's hard to count there, but for 18 years I flew all over the world.
So I find it odd to meet you at this place. What brings you into this kind of health freedom movement, Jim?
Well, the experience I went through in 1999 when the military started their mandatory anthrax vaccination program was something you don't forget.
Now, in the military, don't they already have rules about the number of vaccines you need to get and whatnot?
Yes. Yeah, to be worldwide mobile, I was vaccinated for many different ailments there, and I was happy to do so. When you look at some of the diseases that ravage some of the places that we had to go, I was happy to be defended.
But the anthrax one stands out in your mind. Why is that?
Well, in 99, they started the experimental use of the anthrax for biowarfare defense. They were concerned that an enemy could weaponize anthrax, aerosolize it, spray down our troops, and we really had no defense against it. So the decision was made at that time to armor everyone with a vaccine.
Now, I wonder how much testing that vaccine went through.
Oh, I had a lot of information. I did a lot of research to try and make an informed decision, and I read the information on the good side, that as the military would have called it, and I read some of the outside information there. To hear it advertised, they said it was the safest vaccine in the world, with a history back to the 1970s for livestock workers. Whether they gave us the same exact serum that they had used for so many years, I don't know. Who knows?
So what happened, Jim?
Well, I was in a flying squadron of healthy 20, 30-year-olds, young people in military strength, a lot better than I am right now. And at that time, the topic of the day when they started the vaccinations started to become, have you heard about the weird illnesses? Have you heard about what happened? And so there was one gentleman in the reserves there, a colonel, and his fingers went off at all weird angles there. And I learned later he had rheumatoid arthritis, developed an autoimmune disease, and had rheumatoid arthritis. You had a loadmaster, a young African-American man, sent off to Bethesda for 3 months with Guillain-Barré syndrome, autoimmune disease, where his immune system attacked his nervous system. You had one of my close friends, another pilot, and he got off of a mission there. He had sores on his body, and he was rushed off to the hospital. They told him if he had delayed another 24 hours, he would have died. So, normal group of healthy people, this is probably the first time in my life that I really saw a lot of illness, and none of us could understand it.
And did you start to connect the dots? Maybe it was related to the vaccine?
Well, I'll tell you, everybody seemed to have these bouts of whatever shortly after taking the anthrax vaccine. So you do start to connect some dots, and you do start to wonder. And for those cases that you couldn't hide, the people who had to be hospitalized, there were at least 20 or 30 more of the people who could still get by, and they didn't even talk about it because the medical community went on lockdown, and they started to say, there's nothing to see here. This is the safest vaccine that the world has ever known. This vaccine's been used since the 1970s. I can recite all their talking points to you, but you could see with your own eyes that something wasn't right.
So what happened next?
Well, my flight commander, brilliant young woman, fellow pilot, and she had vertigo. She had loss of short-term memory. These aren't good things for a pilot to have.
It's not.
She was always around. So I started talking to her, asking her questions, what's going on? And she believed that it was related to the vaccine. And she expressed that to anyone who would listen to her story. She became public enemy number one of the leadership and of the medical doctors there. We'd have briefings from the doctors saying, why her condition is normal. They sent her off for psychiatric evaluation because they said that it was all in her head. Well, finally, thank God, some better doctors, doctors at Walter Reed, Army doctors, and I'm Air Force, and it pains me to say that, but those doctors at Walter Reed figured out what was going on with her, and they patched her up as best they could. I believe she had pernicious anemia, an autoimmune disease where the immune system attacks your body. And so before I took the 4th shot of that vaccine, I was afraid.
Of course, I didn't realize there was more than one shot.
Yeah, so it was 6 shots administered over an 18-month period. Don't know why the one shot didn't work, but you had to get the first one. 2 weeks later, you got the second one. 2 weeks later, you got the third one. 6-month point, you had to get the 6-month booster. 12 months, you got the 12-month booster. 18 months, you got the 18-month booster. I hope they don't make the COVID vaccine that complicated.
Oh, my gosh. Goodness, no. And so did you get the 4th shot?
I delayed a little bit before getting the 4th shot because I was afraid. And I talked to my commander, and I told him I didn't want to continue with the vaccinations. And he told me in no uncertain terms what the consequences would be of that decision. He said that I would be court-martialed, I would be sent to Leavenworth, and I would be dishonorably discharged for failure to follow a lawful order. And so that was a choice that I faced in 1999, to take counsel of my fears and not take a shot. And, what are the odds anyway? I mean, I only saw a few people get sick, and I had taken 3 shots. I hadn't gotten sick yet, so I made the choice. I played the odds. I took the vaccine. And that's the day I lost my health.
Jim, how old were you at the time?
Well, don't worry about me. I was 99. I was 29. But I was the day after I took the vaccine, the fatigue started, and I had fatigue like I really haven't known. I would fall asleep for 12 hours, and I would wake up, and I'd still be just dog tired. I about fell asleep flying at one point. I don't think I really ever told anyone that. But I needed treatment. I couldn't continue with the fatigue, but about 2 days after I took the vaccine, the pain started, and I started to get the pain in my hands, and I started to get the pain in my wrists. And we had a little 2-year-old at the time, and I'd carry him around with me wherever I went there, and we had a newborn as well. And so I had all these pains in my arms there, and that went on for a while. Finally, thank God, I eventually got to Walter Reed, to the good docs. And some brilliant Army doctors stood good care of me and figured out that I had developed an autoimmune disease. I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now, if I take a pill every day, all those symptoms are masked, and I'll be fine. So don't worry about me.
But you understood something that your gut was trying to tell you before you got that 4th shot. And now you're out here speaking from a stage about the need for us to be able to have medical health freedom.
Well, I'll tell you what I did to protect my freedom before I took the 4th dose of the vaccine. I left my commander's office, and I went to the doctor, and I told him to give me every blood test that they had given to my supervisor, because I wanted to have a little evidence, because I figured if they're going to prosecute me for refusing, or if they're going to send me off for psych eval, they're not going to send me out there without some evidence. And I have 21 years military service. I think the only thing I was ever afraid of was what the medical leadership community was trying to do to me. And so I got my blood work. I can tell you the day I saw all my results, I had a clean bill of health. I had a clean slate before taking the vaccine. When I took the vaccine, when I started to have all these symptoms, that's when the blood test came back showing I had an autoimmune disease.
And are there people who disbelieve your story?
For me, they didn't have a choice. I had the evidence. The doctors patched me up. They got me some medication, and they wrote a waiver saying, you don't have to take the vaccine anymore. But they said, due to the close temporal correlation, between the onset of symptoms and the anthrax vaccine, wouldn't be medically prudent to take any more anthrax vaccine. I can tell you the day I got sick. I can tell you the symptoms when it started. I can point to the blood work. I can see when it was clean. I can see when it was dirty as all get out. But I can't tell you that I have a vaccine injury, because nobody can tell you that they have a vaccine injury, because the medical community refuses to look. And if they don't do some type of double-blind, placebo-controlled study or whatever, then they're not going to see that there is a problem with any vaccine anywhere. And they're never going to look. They're never going to do those studies because they don't want to.
But don't they take an oath before they become doctors to do no harm? Aren't there doctors out there that really would want to uncover this truth if they possibly could have eyes to see it?
I always thought of it like you see those scientific studies. And recently you could find a study that said smoking is harmful. And you think to yourself, in the 2000s, when you read a study that says smoking is harmful, where have you guys been for 50 years? Well, it takes science a little time, and scientists have to study the metadata. They have to determine that there is a problem, and then they have to look and they have to study it. Science doesn't happen at warp speed. And the doctors can't get ahead of the science. All doctors have our best interests at heart, but they can't get ahead of the science. No doctor could come out to me and say, I think the vaccine did that to you. Okay, doctor, what medical scientific evidence do you have to back that up? So you get to a real chicken and the egg part that a doctor probably truly couldn't tell anyone until the 2000s that they died from smoking.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your own story, and I know that it's part of a whole wave of stories that will be that mounting evidence that scientists and doctors are looking for to help them understand the link between vaccines and illness.
I just want to say that, what I lived through with mandatory vaccination, it was hell. It's not anything I would wish upon anyone. I hope that I can share my story with all of our leaders so that they don't make decisions that the world will come to regret.
Thank you for that word, Jim.
Thank you.
Coming up, attorney Patty Healy explains what resources are available to those seeking vaccine exemptions.
You're listening to the Wise Traditions podcast from the Weston A. Price Foundation. We pause now to recognize our sponsors.
If you've enjoyed the Wise Traditions podcast, do us a favor and just go ahead and subscribe to it. And share the episodes whenever you can. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. These are small ways in which you thank us, but you also make the content more available to prospective listeners. Thank you in advance for your partnership in getting the word out. And Mountain Rose Herbs. Mountain Rose Herbs offers high-quality, organically grown herbs, spices, teas, and botanical goods. They are big on the things that we all care about. Quality. Their products are certified organic. They are vibrant, tasty, and proven safe. And they use responsible sourcing from organic farmers and wild harvesters. Plus, they offer a variety of products including essential oils, candles, soaps, and more. Not only that, they've earned a zero-waste certification in Oregon. So go to Mountain Rose Herbs at mountainroseherbs.com and place your order today. That's mountainroseherbs.com. This is Holistic Hilda, and you're listening to Wise Traditions. Hey, Patty.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm glad to be at this Virginia Freedom Keepers event. It is the March Against Mandates, and you work or volunteer for the NVIC, National Vaccine...
The National Vaccine Information Center was founded in 1982 by Barbara Lowe Fisher and Kathy Williams, two moms who went on to build this organization to educate people about medical decisions, including vaccines, so that you could have informed consent when it came to making decisions about you and your family's health.
You know what I love about your site? It's just like you. It's like super straightforward, not like flaky, weird, nothing will go into my body kind of thing. You just want people to have the information at hand.
Right, because information is power. And so one of the things I've done at NVIC is I have a scientific background as well as a legal background, and I help them update their state exemption web pages. I know it helped me making a decision of what I was going to do with my children and where I was living. And so we just wanted to keep that updated. So because these things change so much, even before this COVID hit, laws were constantly changing. And so we're just trying to make it very user-friendly so parents can come there before the school year starts and get some idea of what it is they need to do or can do.
That's so helpful. Like if I lived in Rhode Island, I could scroll through, find Rhode Island and see exactly what exemptions are possible in my state.
Exactly. And a lot of times we have links to forms where you can print it out. And unfortunately, the links change as the forms or the state websites change. So we go in there, update, make sure everything's active.
And how did you get involved in all this, Patty?
So I have a scientific background. I was a research scientist, and I went to law school, practiced patent litigation, primarily biotech out in California. And then I ended up having a baby, and my niece and nephew, they're twins, was diagnosed with autism. And he did experience some symptoms after maybe during some of his earlier childhood immunizations. I wasn't sure whether that was linked to anything, but it made me start to think. And then I listened to Congressman Dan Burton was having hearings from parents about whether thimerosal was a factor in their children having autism post-immunization. And so once I started looking into that as a scientist, that they didn't use placebos in their safety studies, they didn't do studies looking at vaccinated versus unvaccinated, to me that's just common sense science. I could never publish something without those proper negative controls. And so I just started thinking about it, and it had to change my view about how I was looking at immunizations. And then I decided not to immunize my children And then when we moved from California to Virginia, I got on NVIC's website to look to see which state, because my husband was going to be working at the Pentagon, had the best immunization exemptions. And Virginia at the time was the one who gave us the most freedom. So that's why we moved here.
Well, and now I understand Virginia is kind of cracking down. Can you explain what's happening here now?
Yeah, so back in 2016, current Speaker of the House, Eileen Fillercorn, then delegate, introduced a bill that was going to remove the religious belief exemptions from Virginia for childhood immunizations and greatly curtail the medical exemptions. So we lobbied with a bunch of like-minded people and were able to convince the legislature not to go through with it. So the bill was tabled. Unfortunately, that's something that just doesn't stop there, because with each new legislative session, there seems to be more and more intent in trying to remove these basic human freedoms from the states in which we live. So there was a current bill. Actually, there was a bill that was going to remove the legislative decision when it came to decide which new shots to add. They were going to make it completely CDC recommendations. That was at least watered down to the Virginia Department of Health would make those decisions. So there was still some citizen oversight, but we really wanted to go back to just legislatures making these decisions with exemptions for religious, philosophical, medical, whatever it is people need to do to make the best decisions for them and their families.
And it's not easy to lobby for our rights as individuals, because I understand that the pharmaceutical companies have a lot of money to put into lobbying. So it's hard to get our voices heard, I think. Do you agree with that?
That's what I've heard. That is not something that I've looked at, but I know that a lot of pharmaceutical companies give a lot of money to lobbying groups. And for me, I mean, people want to spend their money, but that doesn't mean that our voices shouldn't be heard and that they can't legislate away basic fundamental human rights, which is what these attempts to remove exemptions are trying to do.
Wow. And so let's go back for just a second. You mentioned how some vaccines are put out without the proper placebo trials. How is that even allowed? Because most medicines they do go through the right trials and stuff.
So my understanding is, and the same thing is happening with COVID vaccine, that it's termed a biologic and therefore is held to a different standard than some sort of other drug. And so my understanding right now is that the current vaccine trials for COVID, that their negative control is their placebo is actually the meningococcal vaccine, which is, so if there is any reaction, since there could be reactions from the meningococcal vaccine or its ingredients, you would never be able to see a signal from any sort of reaction to the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, in other words, they could say, well, the people in the control group who got the control vaccine, which is the meningococcal one, had about the same reactions as those who were in the COVID trial. But the thing is, they're bad reactions, but you wouldn't necessarily know that.
Exactly, because if they have unhealthy reactions and you have unhealthy reactions to the COVID vaccine, they'll cancel each other out. And so they're not using a group of healthy people and just giving them inert ingredients to show whether the COVID vaccine has any safety issues or not. So yes, exactly.
So this is mind-blowing, and I'm so grateful for NVIC and groups like yours that put information out so that people can make informed decisions. I know some folks who have decided, we're going to go ahead and vaccinate our baby, and we've looked at all the information, but I'm not sure they have, because I feel like some information is suppressed.
And I think that you get a lot of pressure. I remember as a new mom being pressured from my mom to vaccinate. And I think a lot of current grandparents or older or other parents have a misconception that the number of shots they received is the same as it is today, when it has greatly expanded. It's over 60 shots now, and beyond what any grandparent would have had even their children vaccinated 20, 30 years ago. So it's not the same. It doesn't stay the same, and people need to understand that, unfortunately, you can't farm out these medical decisions to anybody. You have to look into the information, do your own research, and make a decision for yourself.
Well, that's a great piece of advice. Thank you so much, Patty, for your work, and we look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Absolutely. It was very nice to meet you. Thanks for speaking with me.
We are at the Virginia Freedom Keepers event. It is a march against mandates, and I told one of the organizers I wanted to talk to an average Joe, and they found Joe for me. Hey, Joe.
Hi, Hilda. Happy to be here with you. Thanks for having me on.
So when I first met you, you introduced yourself as a Freedom Keeper. What does that mean to you, Joe?
Yeah, so the Freedom Keepers are a group of Virginians that are concerned specifically with preserving and expanding our medical freedom. So we are pro-informed consent. and we oppose any sort of state-mandated medical treatment. We believe it should be the individual's right to choose, or the individual parent's right to choose and direct medical treatment for their children, and so that's what we're here to support.
But what you're saying makes so much sense to me. And I mean, isn't that where we stand today, that we all have the freedom to make the medical choices we choose to?
Well, you'd think so, Hilda, and under normal circumstances, maybe that's the way it works out on a day-to-day basis. Now, with COVID, as you know, there's a lot of people out there that are scared. They want a solution to this virus. A lot of people are looking for a vaccine. They want a vaccine as soon as it's available. Our health commissioner has even come out and said that as soon as a vaccine is available, he intends to mandate that every Virginian have to take that. And I'm sorry, Hilda, but we view that as a violation of our civil rights. Okay? We believe that the individual's body is sovereign, and so we as individuals can choose what we want to come in or not to come into our bodies. Whether it's a vaccine, whether it's any kind of other medical treatment, we believe that it should be the individual's right, or in the case of minors, the parent's right to choose and direct their own medical treatment. So for those that want the vaccine, we definitely want to make sure that it is available for them. But for those that wish to wait, perhaps, or wish to choose not to vaccinate, or to not take specifically a COVID vaccine that's not yet tested, we want to make sure that they have the right to do so.
So, Joe, what put this whole movement on your radar?
Well, it was really my wife that first got me involved with the Freedom Keepers here. The group is just over a year old, and the group is specifically focused on the issue of medical freedom. We actually started before COVID became a worldwide pandemic. When I first got involved in the group, it was the first few cases in China were first coming. We became aware of it on the news, but it wasn't yet a health crisis here. Businesses weren't shut down here. It wasn't what it is today. Now, because of the pandemic, this whole issue of medical mandates and mandatory vaccinations is going to be front and center in the national consciousness. And so we're here basically holding up the standard for freedom and liberty. We want individual Virginians, we want the sovereignty of their bodies and their children's bodies to be respected by the government. And that also means without threatening taking away access to government services like public schools or childcare, for example.
Which is a little bit of what's happening right now. In other words, let's say I want my kid educated in the public school, but they have to sit in front of a screen for so long a time, it may not be conducive to actual learning, right? So in some ways, because of the current situation, their right to an education is being infringed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we don't know what the long-term effects of these mask wearing is going to be. My wife actually just had to be treated for strep throat. And when she went to the doctor yesterday, they told her that the cases of strep throat are going up. It's suspected because more and more people are wearing these masks and they're breathing in and rebreathing in their own bacteria more than they otherwise should be. So we don't even know what the long-term, negative effects are going to be of all these heavy-handed medical mandates. And we just want to make sure that individuals' right to choose and direct their own medical treatment is respected.
So what can people do, Joe, besides showing up at marches or rallies like this?
Well, I think these rallies are an important step. I think that the elected officials need to hear our voice. They need to know that this is an issue that is important to us. They need to know that we're not going away. This is not just the issue of the day. This is a fundamental civil rights issue. And so all freedom-loving Virginians, all parents that care about the safety of their children, parents that believe that they ought to retain the right to direct their children's medical treatment, of course in consultation with our family doctors. But this medical freedom movement is everybody. It's your neighbor. It's the guy that's sitting next to you at church. It's your cousin. So this thing is a much, much bigger than a group of fringe, they want to paint us as this fringe anti-vaccine movement. We're not an anti-vaccine movement. We're a pro-medical freedom movement. We want vaccines available to those that demand it, and we want the medical freedom and medical choice respected for those that choose not to do it.
Well, thank you for that distinction. I think that's really important. Last but not least, you told me you have 5 kids. Is that right?
We do. We've got 5 children ranging in age from 8 down to 2.
So are you doing this in some respects for their future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, if we allow the government to set a precedent that it can forcibly apply medical treatment against our consent, then we will have crossed a red line from which there is no return. Now, mark my words, if we allow them to get away with a mandatory COVID vaccine against our will now, 10 or 15 years from now, we're going to be dealing with mandated sterilization, mandated abortions, because it's in the greater good, the good of the public health. Okay? The greater good or the public health has nothing to do. I'm talking about civil liberties guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States. Life, liberty, and property will not be infringed without due process. Okay? And part of that means not infringing on my ability to choose what goes into or doesn't come into my body.
Wow, well, you just gave us an education. You took us to school, so thank you so much, Joe.
You got it, Hilda. Thanks so much for having me on.
Our guests today were Major Jim Gallagher, Attorney Patty Healy, and Joe Ordia. Visit virginiafreedomkeepers.org for more on this organization. And remember, you can go to our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the Get Involved tab to find health freedom groups near you. And I'm Hilda Labrador. You can find me at holistichilda.com. And for the transcript for this podcast, just go to westonaprice.org and click on the podcast page. And now for a review from Apple Podcasts. LG Mo had this to say: "It is a positive podcast and thought-provoking too. We love hearing the thoughtful questions and the fresh take on timeless concepts based in nourishing traditions. We are delighted that you are doing 2 episodes a week just now, and we also appreciate the brevity of the shows. I finally joined the Weston A. Price Foundation after years of using the cookbook and listening thanks to you. Keep it up. LGMO, it is our pleasure. And feel free to rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts yourself, or write a letter to the editor for an upcoming journal. And thank you so much for listening. Stay well, my friend. Hasta pronto."
On behalf of the Weston A. Price Foundation, thanks for listening. We have many free resources to support you on your health journey. Visit westonaprice.org to find podcasts, articles, videos, and more. You can also find a local chapter near you for help in finding sources of great food. We invite you to support the Foundation's mission of education, research, and activism by becoming a member. Thanks again, and take care. Wise Traditions is a project of the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. The content on this podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice.